Good evening and welcome to Pain to Power, Leading with Love. My name is Maria. I'm also Brown Girl Interrupting. And today I have a wonderful guest with me, Deanna Kuhney. And we are really excited because today we are coming live to you from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and ready to talk about Pain to Power. How you feeling today, Deanna?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous, but
nervous?
I feel like I'm supposed to be looking at you
Then
and not at the camera. Okay,
Deanna is a
to be
pro.
Totally authentic about this.
It's gonna roll. It's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be a great conversation. I already see we have some Ranchers Union family members in here. Welcome and good evening, Stephanie. Thanks for showing up. So tonight, don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. It's just gonna be a conversation, right?
Okay.
Like you and I have conversations all the time. So I have to introduce Deanna properly. Deanna is my big sister. But she is the most tough love big sister I've ever had in my life. Deanna is the friend you go to when you don't want to just hear what you need to hear, but rather, or what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. She tells it like it is, and she's very real. And so tonight, I would love to introduce all of my Ranchers family and all of the Ranchers Network and all of the audience members to this amazing woman who has been in my life now for 7 years.
Yeah.
We have worked together in race and equity, which is a topic we talk about all the time. But in that time, we have also gotten to know each other as women, as mothers, in relationships, in dating, in just being human and what that is. And I have learned so much from Deanna, and I'm so excited because tonight you are all going to learn so much from Deanna. So,
Lord, this is a setup. Hi, everybody. All right, let's go.
So Deanna, the show is called Pain to Power, and I always ask every guest because I think we define that idea of taking pain and turning to power differently. So for you, what does that mean when you have pain to power?
So traditionally, when I think, and when you talk about pain to power, I remember when you thought about the podcast and you started it. And for me, the reference is that you go from one point, you might have pain, and then you overcome it, and you've transitioned into this power, right? To me, it's not an overcoming of pain necessarily, but more of a way of kind of embracing the pain. For me, the power is being able to live with it, not necessarily that I ever conquer it, but I'm in relationship with it. Because for me, all pain is not hurtful. It hurts, but it's not necessarily hurtful. And some pain I don't want to release. And I'll say that for me, with loss, like the loss of my siblings, right? It's painful to think about that, but when I'm thinking about them, it feels good. So it's being able for me to navigate the pain or be in relationship, I'll say, because it's not something I'm running from.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's the power in actually being able to be in relationship with the pain and not feel like it's something I have to conquer and get rid of, and it's forever behind me, right?
But that's a beautiful thing, I think, because it's such a peaceful pain that you have, right? And it's so different than how most of us view pain because pain is looked at as a bad thing. And I think most of the people on the show come on and they talk about pain in this way of that it isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like it's necessary for growth. It's necessary for us to understand ourselves better. But I love how you said that to be in relationship with pain is such a different dynamic of how to look at it. Because then you don't welcome it in, right? You don't want it, but you can embrace it and stand with grace through it. And I have to say, I know you and I've seen you through a lot of different things and some painful moments, right? In these last few months particularly. And the way you stand with grace it says so much about who you are. And who you are has always inspired me. You know that. Yeah, I'm gonna get all gushy. But if you knew Deanna, and those of you who know Deanna, you know it is her aura, it is her energy, it is the way that she moves through the world. Which to me, I want to bring this back to this idea of kind of power, right? Let's go into this idea of power because what I think has been so transformationally powerful for me, learning from you, has been your understanding of self-love. And you have helped me in my journey of trying to understand self-love better. So tell me a little bit about your journey of discovering your own self-love, what that's been like, and what's brought you to where you are right now in that.
So it's interesting because we've talked about this before already. And again, I think sometimes people have to work and arrive at self-love. I don't feel like that was my journey. For me, I grew up the way I grew up. I grew up so different from the community that I live in now and the school system that we work within. I grew up in an all-Black community. Everybody looked like me. My teachers, my leaders, everyone looked like me. And so for me, it was just always been a love for myself, for my people. I didn't have people saying that I was anything other than what I was, right? And so for me, it was just natural. I mean, I love my people. I love me. Because I never had people to tell me I shouldn't love me, which is so different from, say, what my children have experienced, right? Because my children grew up in a predominantly white community and they had this other standard that they saw as a standard, but it wasn't just them, it was the messaging that they received. So I didn't receive that counter messaging to who I was. I was always, embraced, I was affirmed in who I was and the skin I was in. So I was always comfortable in that. And fortunately, it came at a young age. And so when I grew up and I encountered things that tried to tell me something different than what I was, I didn't believe it. I was already full of myself at that point. I'm like, what are you talking about? But it's really hard though for my kids, right? I had to really work hard for them to have self-love because the messaging and the people that they saw didn't do that for them. The teachers that they had didn't always do that for them. So I had to do a lot of work to help my children have that same self-love.
I think you outlined so many powerful things about this idea of the community growing up, like in the fact that it was so much like you. Everybody looked like you. Everybody was supportive of you, and so in that, what are some of those messages in that self-love that have gotten you through moments where you could have been influenced by this? You could have not given prioritize yourself in moments, right? Where you did. So what allowed you to stay strong and really embody that self-love in your own movements through life, things that have happened to you?
If I were to say anything, it was really just a real clear understanding of who I was as a person, as a woman, as a person. I I never doubted or bought into this idea of of people of color or Black people not being just as or greater than others. I mean, because that's the messaging my kids got, right? So I didn't get brainwashed in that way. So I think it was just always in my inner core. I mean, you couldn't tell me that I was something else than I was because I never believed that in the first place. But I think when people have or when they're told something about themselves from an early age, or they see these different messaging, they buy into it and then they question themselves, right? I don't know. I just didn't. And my community today, although when we were integrated. I, I'm not telling my age, but by saying that I grew up and started integration, it was integrated into schools in middle school. Um, it was, I'm sure, going into those communities, because we went into white communities, we were probably looked at as being different or maybe something to be feared, but in ourselves, um, I just think about how tight knit, how close we were. And I don't know, I just never let that phase me. I guess the true answer to that question mark is I don't even know. I don't. And that's it. I don't even know how it is, how it came to be, but I do believe that my socialization and growing up just is the core of who I am. And I'm always comfortable being in my skin in other places or anywhere I show up. So I don't know. I can't pinpoint it for you.
No, and that's okay. I mean, I think, but that's a really honest thing too, right? To
Mm-hmm.
not be able to, I think, and to me, that's how internalized that socialization of your awareness of self and affirming of self is, right? And I've learned so much because I think I remember one time you said the word that stuck with me is you said, no one can take my dignity. And that was such a strong thing because I remember we were talking about relationships and dating, and that was one of those things with Mario. I was making some bad choices, and I was certainly not recognizing my value the way I needed to. And I think those were things that I remember me and another one of our colleagues, right? We looked at you kind of like, how do you do that? Like, how do you just have it, right? And you do just have it. But so we were actually talking earlier today about this, and you mentioned something that stuck out to me, and I'd love to hear more about it. You said, but it's a double-edged sword because it's bittersweet, right? Like, so what is it that makes it, both
bitter and sweet?
Bitter and
Self-love. So I think I get misconstrued. I think people, because I have this self-love, people tend to think maybe it comes out as arrogance, overconfident, sometimes dismissive. It could be many things. I do feel, because people tell me, well, Tina, you don't have to dismiss it. You don't have to be dismissive. And it's really,
I love it. Josh says, you can tell Deanna, don't take her crown off. Yes, don't take your crown off. People do dismiss it, but what?
Well, so for me, it's a them problem. And I think so again, see, that's what happens. People think
that's it. It's a them problem. Like, I want to live my life walking through the world being like, that's a them problem. Like, only Deanna can do it.
Because I know that I'm not being dismissive, and I think people tend to also think because of self-love. I do have self-love, and for me, that means that I have to have boundaries around my emotions and my connections, and I'm very careful with who I let into my very inner space, because vibes and stuff mess me up. They can, right?
Right.
So I'm very careful about that. And so what happens sometimes is that other people will get emotional and get upset that I'm not emotional. that I'm not getting emotional. And so since I'm not getting emotional, they've determined that I'm dismissive. But I know that I'm not being dismissive. It's just that I save that kind of energy for people who are in my very core circle, right? And so I don't display those emotions just willy-nilly, haphazardly. I conserve my emotions. That's what I do.
Is that a form of self-preservation too, a little bit for you?
Probably, yeah. I guess you could call it that, self-preservation. Or it's just that I just don't want to waste energy. I mean, which is self-preservation, but in my mind, it's just, I don't know. I know what I'm thinking is going to come off arrogant, so
just go for it.
I'm not even going to say it. I will just leave it at that. I preserve and conserve my energy for those who are in my inner circle.
And I respect that, and I appreciate that, and because I think that is something we all need to do. And I would say for me, I've learned that is a little bit of my self-preservation. Is this awareness of like, I could get angry, I could say something, I could respond, or I could just keep that energy right with me, and not everybody is even worthy of even your anger sometimes, right? Like, or your frustration, right? Sometimes it is better just to stay closed and not speak to it, right? So, okay, we're going to shift a little bit because I am a writer, right? And so I have written several posts. What you all do not know is my inspiration for many posts have been conversations with Deanna. There's a few. We're going to talk about them today, but the first of which is that I wrote this post that I shared with you, right, called Welcome to the Dark Side. And it was the most realist conversation that got me thinking about, I can't, you hang out with Deanna when you want to hear what you need to hear. And I broke down in February and finally hung out with Deanna after many weeks of avoiding Deanna and avoiding conversation with Deanna because I knew where my headspace was and I wasn't ready. But when I was ready, she came over and Welcome to the Dark Side was that you introduced me to the fact that maybe I make mistakes. and I am to blame for some of the problems in my life. And I know that sounds really arrogant of me to say, is that like I discovered it in February of 22 when I was 44 years old. But the way she framed it, I really did understand more about myself. And so I want to know from you, if you were to welcome yourself to the dark side.
Flip the script.
So, welcome to Deanna's dark side. What are the things that you have learned about yourself that were hard to swallow a little bit, but that helped you grow?
So now I don't know if this is going to answer your question, but this was a very painful experience for me. I had to grieve the loss of a friend. Back in 2019, we went, it was a mistake apparently. We went on a trip together. And it was just that throughout this trip, she was just poking at me, just little stuff. And I'm like, well, why are you coming for me like that? I didn't understand it. And so I said something to her. Basically, I said, why do you do this? Do you do this to your friends? Do you do this to your family? Right? Apparently that cut so deep that, we were friends for like 20 years. And just from that, she could not speak to me. She didn't speak to me, really. It was for like 3 years. It wasn't an immediate falling out, but we knew at that moment that something had changed and had shifted in our relationship. And so over that time, I was saddened, but I was also angry in that you haven't realized that what you said or did affected me too. It was all about what I did, what I said. and realized I had to really do some soul searching around what is the issue? Because I'm in this pride mode now. I'm like, okay, you can't acknowledge it. You need to do some self-reflection and figure this out too, right? So I was like, okay, we were at a standoff, really. That's where we were. And then I realized, I was like, then I had a falling out with another friend.
Yo, we on a trip together. I don't know about this.
like,
I'm gonna have to watch myself.
Gina, there's a pattern happening here, and you are like one of the main ingredients. So you need to do a little self-reflection.
That's a moment, right?
Yeah.
You look and you're like, oh, I'm the pattern.
Yeah, I'm the pattern here. Well, something's happening. What I discovered though was, I was mad at this person, the second one that I fell out with, because she did something to me. And I'm like, and not only did she do something to me, she kept wanting to make up, but saying, we can do better. We can do better. We can do better. I'm like, we can do better. I
You do better.
was mad.
That's a you problem. That was your moment.
No, I'm not taking this okey doke, okay? But and so though, what that made me realize, because I'm like, you need to do some self-reflection. I don't feel like I can tell you what you did, because that's not for me to tell you. You need to come to it. So I'm saying these words, and then I'm thinking about my other girlfriend over here, and I'm like, okay, Deanna, so what's the self-reflection for you? What is the issue for you? And I kept thinking, I said, well, why is she so hurt? And then I realized it wasn't really the words. It wasn't that I said it. It was a situation, because it was related to her family, and that cut, because there were some other things going on. So that connection made her feel really deeply about that. And so finally, I knew what I had to say. I'm like, you know what? We've had surface conversations about this. I said, well, that's what you said. And I said this because of that, and blah, blah, blah. But realizing what I never said to her, because my other friend who fell out, when we fell out, I said, well, Deanna, why are you so upset with her? And I said, it hurt. What she did hurt. It hurt. And that's hard. That's hard for me to say. It's hard for me to say I hurt. And so that was my wake-up call with my other friend. I said, you know what? We were so close. The only reason that she could still not be speaking to me is because I hurt her. I hurt her. Yeah, I hurt her. And so I called her up, because she invited me to come to Florida. She moved to Florida. She has two homes, one here, one in Maryland, and one in Florida. She's having this get together, and she invited me to come. And I called her and I said, you know, I'm not going to come because we're not in a good place, right? There's a whole bunch of people coming, and I know we're not in a good place, and I'm not good at being inauthentic.
Right.
But I said, but you know what? I want to apologize to you. I said, I'm apologizing because I'm apologizing for hurting you so deeply. And she almost cried. I mean, she was like, oh my God, thank you for, I mean, it was just such a moment. And it made me just realize it's hard for people to admit that something hurt them. Right? And so it was hard for me. It was hard for me to admit that. And so that was for me, that was my thing. But after I've said this now to her, I'm like, I think I can do anything now. I'm like, I'm liberated. I'm free. Okay. Yeah, you hurt me. Yeah, Marty, you hurt me. Y'all hurt me.
Y'all hurt me.
Everybody.
But you know, so it's so interesting to me, and I saw we had some comments up, so I want to address what we saw. I saw Viv had a comment, and thank you, and welcome Viv Cologne. There is an amazing interview with her on Inquirer Rochelle, which is coming up. You have to watch it. She says having awareness means being conscious of own thoughts, emotions, and feelings, and helps with our self-regulation. So important. And so I was thinking, kind of along that lines, right? Like, it is so different when we show up. You said the word pride, right? And my dark side is ego, and they're all very connected, right? They're these ways that we somewhat are protecting ourselves, but at the same time we're not acknowledging ourselves fully, right? And it's so different when you come to someone in that space of pride and ego and I'm right, but I'm just gonna come and have this conversation and get the apology I need. Versus when you come to someone with this vulnerability of real emotional hurt and real emotional empathy. And that's exactly it, right? Like that shift in how you told the stories, how you reacted to them, right? It's so different.
Well, people recognize BS, right? I mean, that's basically what it is.
That's true. That's true.
When we're
Right?
inauthentic, right? Yeah.
But I don't think it's easy for people to always be authentic, right?
Absolutely not.
So thinking about that, like we talk about vulnerability a lot, and Stephanie says, yes, exactly. So I think about this idea of vulnerability, and we talk about it all the time in our work, right? But for you, particularly, right, there's so many things that I think you've had to be more vulnerable with in exposing yourself, and even this, right, like this vulnerability, like, what does it mean to you to be vulnerable, and how are you able to be vulnerable? Like when you make those decisions to show those parts of you.
So for me, if I'm not vulnerable, I'm not authentic. So for me, authenticity is so important. It's just a morality that I have for myself. That Deanna, if you can't be real with anybody else, you got to be real with yourself. And therefore, I have to be vulnerable because I've got to see it all. I've got to address it all, the good, bad, and the ugly. And I do that for me. And I don't know. I just realize that it's painful. It hurts, but I'm not going to be real unless I address and face those things. And I think sometimes, and I'm working on this. I'm working on it because I don't accept inauthenticity from other people as well. And I got to let people get to their own stuff, but it's hard for me to relate and connect if I know someone is not. And I don't know that that's different for it. That might be the same thing everybody is, but like I really take it to heart. Like I'm like, okay, you might have been, this is where you are. You're in this outer circle, and that's where you will forever be with that kind of stuff. Because I'm like, if you can't even be true with yourself, you can't be true with me.
You definitely can't be true with me, right? But so many people are not true with themselves nor true with other people, right? That authenticity is not easy to find. I found.
Well, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I think that's why oftentimes people don't come to me. I mean, you say it too. My sister did it.
I waited a while before I went to Deanna, right? You gotta be ready. You gotta have the thick skin. You gotta be ready for what Deanna's gonna show you or tell you.
But see, and I know that I do that to people. I mean, but I do it to myself, right? And I know that's the way I am. But I don't feel like I can operate any other way.
And shouldn't.
Yeah, but like you said, it's hard.
You.
I've had so many people like I told you, my sister told me, keep your opinion to yourself. Right? She's like, yeah. That burned me for my that was cutting when she told me that. I'm like, what do you mean? This is the truth. You don't want to know it? I mean, what do you mean keep it to myself? Make some crazy decisions. But like I said, I gotta realize, everybody's gotta do things in their own time and what they're comfortable with. And just because I don't understand it doesn't mean it doesn't make sense to somebody else. Doesn't make sense to me, but that's okay. That's me. It makes sense to.
And they're on their own path and journey, right?
Exactly.
And we've definitely discovered this a lot through motherhood, right? We share similar similar challenges and complexities of raising boys. And you have one, and I have three, but still
Can that
so
just
many
be about
similar
us today?
things.
Do we have to
Oh,
talk
we're
about
not going to talk about them. We're not talking about them. Believe me. So actually, what we're about to do is we're going to go to a quick break, and we're going to, as I said, I'm a writer, and so I have been writing a blog, and if you haven't checked it out yet and you haven't gone and subscribed, please make sure you do. It's www.browngirlinterrupting.com. Right up there, you can see it. And you're going to hear a little bit more about my writing and learn about me. Hi, my name is Maria, but you are soon going to know me as Brown Girl Interrupting. And what I mean by that is that very soon, hopefully, you're going to be following my blog. I am a writer, and I started writing because I was married, I had children, and then my life changed when I separated, and I did a lot of learning and reflecting and growing in that process of change, because change always leads us to that. And I've decided to share that with the rest of the world, because sometimes hearing that someone else is going through the same thing as you, or understanding and putting words to the feelings and experiences we're having, helps us to heal from them, or grow from them, or learn from them. And so that's what my blog is. It's writing about life, healing, relationships, parenting, dating, marriage, pain, love, mistakes, growth, and coming out whole still in all of it as a human, flawed, but always open to new things. So that's my life, that's my journey, and it's written in this blog. But my hope is that you are going to go to www.browngirlinterrupting.com and join and subscribe to the blog and read all about my story to help you maybe gain some perspective on yours. All right, welcome back. And so I'm here with Deanna Kuhney. And we are not talking about being mothers, but we are very much women, right? And so, as I said, some of my blog pieces, as you just heard, the very first blog piece I wrote, actually, in fact, was very much inspired by you. And I don't know if I ever sent it to you or if you ever read it.
I don't think.
But it was called Dating Advisory. And it was literally,
watch out.
Literally, it was a lot of cautionary moments, but it was, you and I had started this dating thing at the same time. And so I came off from a 17-year marriage. It was like 6 months after my separation. It was fairly early. There's a lot of other things there to unpack of in decision-making issues, right? We could go there, but we're not going there right now. We could, but we're not right this moment. But you also were yourself, and you can tell your story of what you were where you were coming from in dating. So when you started dating at the same time around as me, where were you in your stage of process of dating? Like just, your life story kind of, right? And what was it like? Tell me about dating. That's the look. You know what? That's the look everybody makes when you say dating. Where, like, I swear to God, that like the rolled eyes, really dating.
It was kind of painful, and it was because so I'm a widow, and I had made a conscious decision after my husband passed, not to date. When he passed, I had a 9-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 18-year-old, right? So that was 13 years ago. And we all were in such a state of flux and just change. It was chaotic. It was just chaotic because it was a sudden loss. And for me, it was important to focus on my kids, because I knew that dating required a lot of attention, and I didn't want to divide my attention. I didn't think it would be fair for a partner or for my kids. And so that was, God, 10 years. I did not date. I said, okay, I'm going to get these kids out of school and on their way. And one still hasn't launched, but that's another story. Um, but so it was 10 years. I was married for 16 years when my husband passed. So 10 on to that was 26 years. So going into dating was like a foreign thing to me. It was just like being on another planet, because the way I left dating when I got married those 26 years ago, the way you met and talked and engaged was totally different.
There were no ads.
26 years, there were no
There was no
ads.
swiping.
Not at all. So that was a transition in itself, trying to get into that way. And then not long after that, then we got the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and it just got worse. So I've navigated it better now that we're post pandemic, because now we're back into actually physically being able to see and meet people. So it was funny.
Viv says, dating. See, you're making that same face right now too, aren't you, babe? You rolling your eyes. You got that look. We know.
You know what, though? I will say just recently, I'm starting to enjoy the dating process.
Okay.
I did dread it. I guess what shifted probably was me learning more about me and what I wanted, and going into things with more informed about myself, but also a letting go of a structure of what I thought it was supposed to be, and kind of, I feel this freedom and this liberation now, that it doesn't have, there's no script for it. For me, there's no script.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of, it is what it is when it is, and when it doesn't work anymore, then you move on. And I think as long as we're open and honest about that going in, you know, it's cool. I'm enjoying dating right now.
I love that framing though, like that it's liberation to have that. And I would say that, you know, when I started also, right, like it was very different and I was in a different place. But now, yeah, I do think it's actually, I'm starting to see the fun in it.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see that, and I think for me, it's the same thing. It's like kind of similar, is that I think it's the self-awareness of myself, but I'm starting to realize I get to make a choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that then makes it that, you know, it's not like I'm sitting around here waiting for someone to choose me or decide on me, right? Like I have all these options that I can decide from that work for me. And it's really me knowing myself to be able to do that, right? But so what other big lessons, like, because it is different, right? The dating is different. What are some other things that you've learned through this process?
I've learned one thing is that all roads don't have to lead to marriage. And I think sometimes, and I'll say for myself, I would go in thinking, this is where this is going. In my mind, this is where this needs to go, right? But then finding out that maybe that's where it needs to go, but it's not with that person. And that's okay. So now I've shifted where I think it should go. I go in saying, I don't know where this is going to go. I know it's probably cliche, you know, enjoy the journey, but that's more of what I'm doing. I'm enjoying the journey, and we'll see.
There's
where
a liberation
it goes.
in it.
There's
though,
a liberation
to enjoy
in that.
the journey and not have a plan for
Exactly.
the journey, not have a stopping point or, you know, or check marks, right? Like enjoying the journey truly is that I'm on this journey to enjoy it, as long as it's working for me and it's beneficial and it's, you know, it's fun. And as soon as it stops being
Get off the bus.
Yeah, like okay, done. Like I'm like this was a great ride, and now I'm done, right? And that's okay. It's totally okay, right?
You know what though? It's funny. I was having a conversation with a friend, and what we had to realize in that conversation was, I think I've become more prepared to say, okay, when it's done, I can get off the bus. Like I had all the control in the world. But sometimes the other person decides it's time to get off the bus, right?
So true.
And I think that going into it, also recognizing that's the way it could end. I think sometimes I would probably hinder progress in a relationship because of me thinking this might not work. And so when I thought it might not work, then I would not put in my all, right? You had your bets kind of,
Yeah.
right? And I realize now that that hedging is a hindrance. So I've had to say, okay, I'm in it, and I'm in it, and I'm going to deal with the good, the bad, the ugly. And, I'm willing to take the risk. That's it. Because I think in relationships, we take risks. There are no guarantees.
Right.
And we have to be good with, or okay with, or able to manage the pain that comes with that too. Not being the one who says, I'm getting off, because we like to think we're the prize, and we are prizes, but everybody's a prize. And so
people have different pathways in life, right? I've discovered that, and make different decisions, and maybe it's not you, right? You're not in their trajectory, you're not in their plan, and that is the hard part, because I think that's just it, right? When you're all in, which I think I started this dating thing with that all in, right? When I met the person that I was, in a relationship or in a dynamic with, or whatever it was, right? And but that risk, you have to have some kind of it's almost like insurance, right? Like a risk insurance, right? Like where's the State Farm for relationships? Because it's a risk you're taking, and if you don't have some kind of backup for yourself, which I don't think I did at first, right? It's really hard to recover from it, and I've gone through that a couple of times now, and but I will say that it made me jaded. It made me not want to take the risk again. And I was, for a while, I was one of those, like, and I don't know, maybe I still am a little bit, but like, dip your feet in and it's not all in, right? But I think that what I am realizing about myself is that that's not the authentic me. I'm not a dip your feet in person. I'm an all in woman. I'm a one person, all in. I want you as my partner, my companion person, right? Like I don't do this casual dating thing well. And I think we have to be so honest with ourselves, and that's the knowing ourselves. Because for a little while I tried to convince myself, oh yeah, I can do this casual dating thing, right? Like Dee said, yeah, you did.
I remember that. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. And that was the look, right? Like, Mari, you let me know how that goes, right? I wasn't good at it because it's not my thing, right? But I think that's the part of that self-love, self-awareness, that's that whole piece of all these things we're talking about, of to know yourself to that level of authenticity, of honoring truthfully what it really is that we want. Particularly, I think, as women in dating. I think women tend to make more sacrifices in their decisions in dating to appease or please or keep. I'm going to say keep because it never does, right? If someone wants to stay, they stay. And if they don't want to stay, they don't, right? It's not your behavior that changes any of it. It's them. But we do that more often in relationships without fully knowing and understanding who we are and what we want. And I'm victim to that for sure, right? But I've definitely learned more through the experience of this, right?
Well, I think for me, I have had to redefine what dating is for me. What does dating mean? And I think we get caught up sometimes if we think that dating necessarily means intimacy. And I think for women sometimes the intimacy is what pulls us in to this commitment, into this relationship, because once we've taken that step, it's like you're at the point of no return, right? You keep going.
Now we're here. Now
right,
we're
we're here.
Right?
Now this is what this needs to be, and this is what we need to do. And so for me, I am redefining what dating means, and I think that has given me some sort of liberation. So, and I think a one person. That's what I thought too for dating. It's one. I'm a one man woman, and I want you to be a one woman man. That's my requirement for dating. But if I separate intimacy from that, I don't have that same requirement for me.
So that changes the dynamic, though,
right?
And you shifted my thinking, which always talking to Deanna does, right? Like I walk away from Deanna's office like, oh, I didn't think about that. Like, right? Every time.
Age
and Deanna and Josh says that's key, Deanna. Yes. And I will say that you're right? Because I think there's different elements and Amanda Bassinger, welcome Amanda, says being okay with not being 100% control. Very much true, right? Not being in 100% control is so important. We were just talking about that, right? This as facts is the idea of letting go, right? And I think that is part of my liberation in dating right now is that it's letting go, letting the outcome be whatever it is. But I will say I do think that there are different things you get from different people. And if you do take away, I don't know, I could have the intimacy too. So I'm not going to take the intimacy away. I'm going to say, I'll be honest. That's the honesty, right? This is honesty, right? Yeah. Authentically honest. I don't need to not have the intimacy. But that there's different things that different people bring into your life that I guess you can get if you are meeting multiple people that fulfill those things. I think part of my I want one person is because I just haven't found any interesting people. Maybe I don't know what it is, but I think that's part of it for me is like the struggle of even finding those different personalities in the people that I'm dating or looking for, right?
Yeah. Of course, we hope that we find as many of those elements in one person. But for me, the intimate part doesn't mean that there's not intimacy. It just means that I might be seeing multiple people. I might be dating, but I'm not intimate with everyone. And for me, I would only be intimate with one at a time. But that doesn't mean I can't continue to see other people. As long as that relationship that I am intimate in is honest in that that's what it is, and this is also happening, right? If where everyone has to be in the know.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So. And I love it. I see one of my Rancho Spam, Inquirer Rochelle. Rochelle is here. She's amazing. You have to go check out her podcast, Inquirer Rochelle. That is a struggle. Yes, it is a struggle. And so, what's interesting, because we keep using the word intimacy, I think, like, is the struggle, what do you mean by intimacy, physical or emotional? And I was just thinking that, too, because I think intimacy is differently defined, right? Because I think that you can be intimate with just emotional connection. It doesn't always have to be physical. I was talking about physical, to be honest, just to clarify. But and you were talking about physical, but there are layers to that, right? Like so yeah, I am curious to know, Rochelle, what is it that was a struggle? And Josh says, I think one of the most important things young women can learn is becoming intimate doesn't make the commitment. So don't give sex thinking it will keep anyone. That's very true, right? That's very, very true. So if you, and let's be sex positive and whatever, like free, because I think some of us are just free spirits like that, right? Is that like, there's no, I think that as women, we can choose how much we want to give as long as we are protecting ourselves, I think, from not getting hurt, right? So there was a time where that intimacy, that physical intimacy was going to lead to me getting hurt because I was feeling like, okay, well, now we're connected, right? And I think I've come to a place in my life now, and I'm a little bit grown, and I've learned a little bit to now know I just have needs.
Right.
And it's okay for my needs to be met however my needs are met. And I'm comfortable with that. And I'm comfortable with then having my needs met and then moving on to the next thing I need to move on to. And that's okay too, right? And
so
I think
the intimacy is for you. It's not for the other person. Because
it
the way
is
you
for
talk,
me.
and that's totally cool. And I think that's totally appropriate because I think what you were talking about before, and I think what the other comment was referring to, is people being intimate for someone else because they think that that's going to keep that
Yes,
person.
yes. And that's the difference, because I would say that in my past,
Mhm.
the intimacy was not for me.
Right.
It was for others.
Right.
And so there's a shift, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, so dating is a game. Dating is interesting, but there's some good things. There's good things that have come from it, and we are in a good place with that. But so before we start to close out tonight,
Mhm.
I appreciate your time today, but I'm bringing, now what you don't know, Deanna has so much humility. Deanna is a humble lady. She will tell you what you need to know, but she is also a humble lady. She is a writer. She's a brilliant writer. And she's a very authentic person when it comes to obviously sharing her ideas and things. But one thing that I love is that you write from different perspectives. And particularly, let's talk about Frida and Elise. Tell me a little bit about the creation, or the inception, or the birth of Frida and Elise, who they are and how they show up in your life in different ways.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And at one point in my life, I felt like I was being boxed in boxed in being able to be my totally authentic self from my job, from professionalism, right? Now the people look at your social media, um, and they make judgments based on your social media. It can
I think
affect
it's
you.
fireworks.
There are
Sorry.
fireworks
There are
out there.
fireworks that shocked me.
It can affect you, what you say and what you do, and how you portray yourself digitally and on social media. Sometimes gets back to your employers, and then sometimes just people box you in. People, I like smoking cigars. People think that's weird. I like riding my motorcycle. People kind of put you in a box to who they think you are. And so for me, Frida and Elise, so I go by Deanna, Frida, and Elise, and they are my alter egos, and they provide me the ability to say what I want to say, how I want to say it. And Frida came about because I just always liked that name, Frida. I thought it was a glamorous name. I was like, I don't know why my mama didn't name me Frida. I'm like, why not? So I had to give that name to myself. And Frida is that person that's just all out. She's like Angela Davis with the big fro, and she's going to say everything she needs to say, straight up, no chaser. And she curses a little bit. But I'm also Elise, and Elise is more of that person who tries to see the good in everyone. She's like the she reminds me of my sister, the one who's always going to say the right things and do the right things and just be Miss Perfect. Um, and so I put Deanna in there because Deanna kind of talks to Frida and Elise. We're in conversation with one another. Um, and it's just really cool because it's all in my head, and I just see those two people in me. Mm-hmm. And so creating them as characters and have them talk to each other, or us all talk about a situation, allows me to get all those perspectives out clearly. And I think when people see them coming from different kind of characters, it's easier for them to take them and understand them, versus if I'm trying to communicate all of that from myself. Yeah, so.
But I love that, because I think there's many different dynamics to each of us, right? But you've been able to actually like identify each one of those different aspects of you into this formulation of individuals, right? That exist within you. And I love it. Would you say that they're in conversation with each other, right? That's a really cool thing, right? Because I probably imagine that a lot of us have those in conversation moments. We just don't name them, right? And I think it's also interesting, because it brings you back to something we were talking about earlier. I was just thinking about, it makes me think about what we're saying when we're talking about how we have all these components to us as dynamic women. And I know in our conversation, it was that as these dynamic women, there's this challenge in dating, or as we were talking about dating, right? In that not all men have been at this point in our lives have been capable of holding all those different dynamics. So it's interesting to me because I wonder, like, do the men in your life know how to hold Frida, Elise, and Dina all in that way, or have you been able to find anybody to understand those things?
I absolutely think it's confused. It's not just confusing. I think it's surprising and sometimes intimidating because usually when I meet someone, I'm Dina, right? And, that's who I am. But as you get to know me, you'll know, like I said, I like to smoke a cigar sometimes, right? I like to ride my motorcycle. I and I'm not right. We're multidimensional,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes people don't know how to manage all of that, right? Um, yeah, it's sometimes I find it unfortunate, um, and I'll say just in a recent relationship, it was hard for that person to kind of, I don't know, just didn't know what to do with it.
He was fumbling. He was fumbling with it all.
He just didn't know. And you could try to help and say, and but after a while, that's just not gonna work for him or for me, right? Because it puts a lot of pressure on someone to have to do those things if it's not within their kind of bandwidth to do that. And I realize it's a lot. So I'm still single.
Well, and as am I, right? But I think that's a real thing that we have, and I've already seen in this chat, right? There's quite a few women in here that I know are also very multidimensional, and all of us kind of sitting here still single, talking about dating with our eyes rolling, right? Thinking about this idea because I think about this often, and for me, I think about, and I was telling you, right, like this idea that I think that some men are capable of taking pieces of it, right? Like I'm good with meeting Dina, right? I'm good with meeting Maria and the professional Maria and the sexy Maria who dresses well and looks cute when she goes out, or like the smart Maria. Like, but can you hold the Maria who has a little bit of a dark side to her because she is not always the kindest person sometimes in her like thinking, right? Or can you hold the Maria who is a free spirit and literally jumps around through life and makes decisions like this and changes things, like let's go to Puerto Rico, let's not go to Puerto Rico, let's meet a friend in Puerto Rico, make him my new person that I hang out with, right? Like that's my life, and it's complex and it's dynamic. I believe it to be totally beautiful and I love it, and you also, I know, absolutely love your life. But to have someone that can handle and understand all those components when we are dynamic women has been truly a really difficult thing. And I know we've got some men in the chat. I saw Mr. Jones. Welcome. Straight from the 40s. I love it. Good evening, Queens. And good evening, Mr. Jones. I have to say that, if you're in the chat and you're a guy, and I know you're here, I mean, share your thoughts, because I'm curious to know, what is it about dynamic women that makes men, because it feels to me, honestly, that they get scared. They get scared by how much we are, or by how much it's going to require. Like you said, it's either a fumbling of the ball, right? Because there's so much.
I didn't use that term.
No. Okay, you didn't say that. You didn't say that. I said that. You said it was holding a lot. Okay, that was my term. I'll take it. But there's so much to hold that I think that not every man has the capacity to hold it all and hold it with grace, right? Actually, I have a post about that too. It's called Heavy Lift. Go read it, right? Like literally, I wrote a post all about that, right? Like this idea of being a heavy package. But I think also in embracing it, and this goes back, we're full circle here. So Mr. Jones says, like, when people say they are single in the way that they're saying they're happy single or not happy, as of being single or both. So are we happy and single? Or are we just single and telling ourselves we're happy? Is that the question? So I'm going to say, for me, I'll let you answer it. What are your thoughts?
So, it's interesting. I I don't read horoscopes all the time, but it was at least 11 years ago I read this horoscope. And it said, I'm a Pisces. Um, and it said, one thing is that you don't have to have a person. I don't have to have a person.
Mm.
And at that time, I was like, well, damn, I don't. That's not what I want to hear. I don't have to have a person. But as I thought about it, and over the years, I have realized that I can do a lot with my life. I tend to fulfill myself, right? And so, is being single my desired permanent state? No, no. But I'm not miserably single.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I really do enjoy my life. Would I enjoy it better with a companion? Maybe, maybe not. Right now, I mean, sometimes the
If
companion
it's the right
does. If it's
companion,
right,
because if
right,
it's not the right companion, is it
right,
necessarily an
right,
improvement in life just to have a
right,
checkbox of a person?
right. But the struggle, though, to your point, and I'm really thinking about this. Not that I want to reduce myself, but what is a compromise, right? That's the struggle for me, trying to reckon with all of this. And we can say it's a lot, and that means it's a lot. So, what do you do with that? You know, what do you do with it? What are you willing to kind of peel away or not be so central for you in your life? And I don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would know when it happens,
Mhm.
right? Because I think for me, to answer your question, Mr. Jones, I I'm happy single. Now I wasn't always. For a moment, I really did think I wanted to be with someone, and I had an idea of who that someone was, right? So that makes it also different, right? But I think I'm in a place now in my life where I'm open to dating, I'm open to meeting people, and I meet people, right? But if it doesn't work and it isn't the right fit, and I truly allow things to unfold as they're meant to unfold, right? I don't control anymore, and if it works, it works. It's great, and if it doesn't, well, it doesn't, right? But I will continue to live my life. I'm gonna continue to travel. I'm gonna continue to create. I'm gonna continue to be a professional. I'm gonna continue to be a great mom. Like I'm gonna continue to do all the things that fill me and give me joy, and I'm loving it. And yeah, it would be fabulous to share that with someone. It'd be great, right? But if they're not going to be a partner in it, if they're not going to be the type of person who can hold and handle all those complexities of me, I don't want it. In a real way. I'm happy with casual. I could do casual for right now. But I'm not going to invest into it in that all in thing unless if I have that. And I know what I'm saying sounds very contradictory to what I said earlier. Dina, you're going to point that out too, aren't you? Because I will say what I also know about myself is I evolve constantly. And who I am and how I see something from 10 minutes to the next 10 minutes might change. And I'm open to that and I'm okay with that. And I don't know all the answers, and I definitely don't know all the answers for myself, but I'm discovering and exploring and figuring it all out. So we're closing out for our night, but I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope it was comfortable and not uncomfortable.
It was not uncomfortable.
and everyone, stay tuned because you will see more of Dina soon. We are working on all different ways to get Dina out of her comfort zone. But I can't even say go and follow her. You could follow, I don't know. I don't know where to go. You don't go, you'll have to wait and stay tuned for when Dina comes back. But do come join me always on my blog, which is up here. Go check out my posts, read the posts, put your email in to subscribe so that you get the most recent ones. And make sure that you comment, that you like things, and that you share it with others if you feel like it resonates with you or might resonate with someone else. Thank you so much, Inquirer Rochelle. Thank you so much for all of, and Viv, thank you for all of our audience members. I know the Ranchers Union family and so many other audience members came up in the chat and came to hopefully watch, and hopefully you're watching this later. And again, make sure you click the bell down below in the YouTube, and you hit the like button and share your comments and thoughts. If you got dating thoughts, share them. If you got thoughts about self-love, share them. And go follow me on Instagram, TikTok. I do have everything. So Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, everything. And so thank you again, Deanna. We are going to go enjoy our night in Puerto Rico. And you all hopefully are enjoying your evening, getting ready for bed. And you hopefully had a good night with us, an intimate conversation with Deanna and Maria, Brown Girl Interrupting. And I will see you again for another episode of Pain to Power Leading with Love every Sunday at 9 o'clock on this channel, on the iRant Network, and on the Ranters Union. And I have to say, the biggest shout out to the most amazing producer ever, whom is the visionary behind all of this, always having my back and always believing in my vision. Because when I called him yesterday and said, this is the show we're doing, he was on board. And Dina was too. So thank you very much. And thank you to Ja. And I have to give a shout out to Federico, who's sitting outside on the balcony right now listening to the show. But he is my friend from Puerto Rico who helped us with the technology to make sure that we had the screen. Viv says, have a wonderful week, y'all. Go to La Placita. That's what I said, to dance. That's our plan. La Placita. We are going out to dance and have a great time. So check you later. Peace, love, and light. And definitely make sure you follow, subscribe, and comment, share, all the good things.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
My world has slowly crumbled around me countless times, and every time I rebuild with the pieces I've been given to birth something so transformational and beautiful that no one else knew might exist before it was shown to them. These moments tend to coincide within my romantic path. The universe has been telling me to focus on the revolution and not romance. It has over time given me the tools, resilience, and light to turn my pain into power. And only now do I see that the key to this always resided in the love and knowing I had in myself, not from the external sources of family or men. The message I have been avoiding might be that my time in this world I had existed in was not to receive love, but to put it out there for others to see, feel, and heal through. Revolution before romance moves pain into power.